Right. Well, first, while this is getting set up, I want to thank Dwight and others for organizing this great event. So we all sort of know that we're drowning in bullshit. We know our information environments are insincere and unreliable. But I want to talk about two kinds of bullshit that I think exists. So there's the old school bullshit and there's new school bullshit. It's kind of how I'll break it out, and then I'll sort of end like this a little bit. I'll start pretty easy. So I live in Seattle where we have tons of startups, and I go and listen to some of these startups on our campus. And I saw this statement: our collective mission is to refunctionalize customer-driven solutions for leveraging underutilized portfolio opportunities. I hear this kind of stuff all the time. There might be some meaning in there, but I'm still wondering. It's this new kind of BS that I'm worried about, and it's the kind that I think students struggle with, and I think the public in general. While short of statistical significance after Bonferroni correction, blah, 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 somehow the second statement seems more truthy. It seems to carry more weight. And it's, more studies are coming out. I don't think we even need the studies to show. This was a recent study out of Dartmouth showing that charts can change hearts and minds, but they can also mislead as well. Let me give you an example. So Statista is a place that aggregates data. They don't really have any left-leaning or right-leaning agendas. And I saw this chart not too long ago. It was looking at the sort of leveling off of carbon emissions from global fossil fuel. You can't see it because it's small enough, but there's this weird change in the x-axis. It jumps in 30-year increments, and so it goes from 1971. It goes to 1971, 2001, and it gets up to 2011, and it goes 2011, 2012, 2013, 2014. Seems like a strange trick to making a leveling claim. So all I did, like I tell our students, is I took that data, replotted it with even axes, and you get a fully different story. So that looks a lot different than the previous graph, and these kinds of things happen literally every single day. When you study bullshit studies, you have plenty of material for your classes every single day that you talk about this kind of stuff. But the point here is that numbers carry authority. They sort of convey some sort of precision and science-ness about it. They sort of convey a weight. They almost seem to come from nature. They convey replicability as well. And that's why 37% of lightning talks tend to be full of BS made-up statistics. So watch out for them. But really, we've known for a long time that words are human constructs. They have this subjectivity. But again, numbers come like straight from the sky, it seems like. And it's these numbers that I think that are more convincing. We tend to worry about those people that are just coming on the internet for the first time, or people that don't have quite the education that people in this room have. But I can tell you, living on a campus, we are as fooled with numbers as any kind of argument conveyance that we have out there. Let me give you another example where words appear fuzzy. So this was published in The Hill. You think the countries are giving us their best people? No, they give us their worst people. You kind of get a sense of what that means, but let's put real numbers behind it. Breitbart News on the same story reported that 2,139 DACA recipients were convicted or accused of crimes. That number seems weighty. It sounds scary. And I'll tell you, that number is actually real. But what should we be doing here? Yeah, out of how many? So I actually looked this up. As always, we should be putting numbers in context. If you look at this exact number, 0.3%, so 1/3 of 1% of DACA recipients have been convicted of a crime, compared to 8.6% of Americans. That tells a completely different story. But there's all sorts of ways of telling stories, and we do this in our class all the time. So even our best journals, and the Wall Street Journal, New York Times, the Washington Post, these are all really high-quality journalistic venues. But even here, you find issues. So here, there was a claim in this story that we should be taxing the middle class, and there was a chart to make the point. Now, you can't see it fully, so I'll zoom in. The only thing you need to know is that the left are from the sort of the poor bins, the middle class is in the middle, and the right are the rich. And you can see something strange going on with the bins. They're being varied arbitrarily. And if you do that, I love this sort of rebuttal of this. If you do that, I can make a case with the same data, you let me change the bins. I can say, well, I can rewrite that story that we should tax the poor. I could rewrite the story and tax the middle class in some ways. And then if you let me still continue to manipulate the bins, we can write a story about taxing the rich. The point is, you can tell any story you want with data. And we do this exercise, and students become very skeptical once they realize how easy this is to do. The point is, I don't think we're teaching students how to question numbers the same ways we do in our humanities courses. And this is something I've realized I teach classes in machine learning and data engineering, and a lot of our STEM students, they're great. I have this lab that we a lot of what we do is technical bound, and we do a lot of work in building systems. And students do this part really well. If I have them find the Jacobian of the transformation, they do it beautifully. If I have them replicate a random forest algorithm, they can do it better than I can. But it's in questioning numbers, like the same ways that we question things in our humanities classes, and when we were looking at the symbolism of birds in Macbeth and spend all those hours thinking about that critical reasoning, I think, is missing in a lot of the classes, especially in this world now is saturated with data and graphs. So my colleague and I, Carl Berkson, we formed this class on calling bullshit in response to, of course, our current climate, but also something we've been thinking about for several years, and in regards to the public's education on science, and so where we make mistakes in science, but mostly around this issue that we keep seeing, that we're not as critical of data as we should be. Now, it did go viral, but the most exciting thing is that it's being used we've been contacted by more than 70 universities around the globe to use this sort of content. So there's kind of this bullshit movement going, which is kind of nice to see. And we also been working with the Knight Foundation has supported a project taking this kind of material and taking sort of the energy around this kind of project and trying to reach out to high school students. And so first we had to eliminate the swear words. So I wrote a website that takes out all the swear words and stuff, and now we have callingbull.org instead of callingbullshit.org. But we have been also spending time and leveraging some of the excitement happening in state legislatures that are now requiring media literacy. The state of Washington, in which I live, isn't doing everything right around education, I can promise you that, but one thing that they're doing is they're now requiring media literacy in the curriculum. We're having direct school interaction around the country. These are just some of the schools that will be starting to use, and some have already used it already, and we're working with high school teachers and middle school teachers to get students more aware of media literacy, digital literacy, and data reasoning before they get to the university. It's so interesting in this direct engagement with students. This was an infographic from one of the students we worked with in New Orleans. And for whatever reason, things like Wikipedia stand low in terms of their credibility, which we were just talking at breakfast this morning, that I find that interesting because I actually look at the Wikipedia as one of our last bastions of truth in the digital environments. I have students at UW that are working on curriculum translation and trying to work on translating this to meet some of the Common Core standards. We're actually creating like physical, not just digital content, so that when we have people that we're going to have a big event at the university and hopefully try to help other universities do the same thing, where we bring students and high school teachers on campus and work with them. We won't be using the word, we'll be using different terms, mostly around data reasoning and digital reasoning. We're also working with local groups in Seattle trying to create public service announcements. That's been hard just because conveying it in 1 minute is always hard for myself or in academics, where we always see nuances. And we're working like with the Trust Project and Hive Lab, Media Labs. And so that's sort of our efforts around high school. But I just want to mention, before I sort of summarize here, that there are all sorts of challenges that we have, and I work in a technology department where we try to throw machine learning at it, and I want us to do that. And I think we do have discussions around policy, but I really think it's that one of the best things that I can do is try to make our information consumers smarter, and so that's what we're after. But I want to end. I started with old school BS. I want to start with some things that concern me now that I've been teaching this for over a year and interacting with students around the country. There's this old school tech that I'm still worried about, and there's new school tech. And let me give you the two examples that are most concerning to me right now. So in Seattle, we have a football team that is somewhat controversial. Michael Bennett, after a big win, was shown here in the locker room, but with some nice photoshopping, he was then a burning flag was put in his hand, and this spread like incredibly virally. It was probably seen by millions of people. It was discussed in the national news. But it's this kind of technology, if you guys have seen, it's not just photoshopping, it's voice shopping. That came out of my university, and I know colleagues that built this software that allows you to basically cut and paste voice. Now, Photoshopping was already a pain. Now we've got voice shopping, and it's getting better and better. And it concerns me, and I think even my colleagues, I try to talk to them, and I think they start to see the issues as well. But it's this new technology that's coming that scares me. Students are good at some things, but I'm not sure they're as good at this. There's also this issue around the spreading of science. That's what I'm most concerned about, misinformation in science. We have fluoridation, which is a very big problem. Actually, I was just talking to a dental group, and they have a lot of truth decay as well. That was our little joke. And so I'll end here with just this idea that search engines sort of just somehow give credibility just by being found on the web. So if I found, do vaccinations cause shaken baby syndrome, you think it'd be the most ridiculous thing you've ever seen. And this is my final side, that my 6-year-old son loves the International Space Station, but the last time I went on that in incognito mode, 3 recommendations for flat Earth. So these are the kinds of things that I'm concerned with, but it's mostly around the data and statistics. And if you want to follow us, the last thing is the bullshit asymmetry principle. The amount of energy necessary to refute bullshit is many orders of magnitude harder to clean it up, so let's do it now. Thank you for listening.